So we're going to dive into this really fascinating connection between your spine, your brain, and your muscles. And we're going to look at some research that asks a pretty wild question. Can a physical adjustment to your spine actually change how your brain controls your entire body?
Okay, let's just jump right into the deep end here. Is it even possible that something you do to the spine could change the signals coming from the brain? I mean, it sounds a little like science fiction, right? Well, a team of researchers decided to actually put that exact idea to the test.
All right, so before we can get to what the researchers found, we need to get on the same page about how this whole system works. It all starts with that signal, the one that goes from your brain to your muscles.
There's a key term for this: cortical drive. And the best way to think about it is like this. Your brain is mission control, and your muscles are the astronauts out there doing the work. The cortical drive is the power and the clarity of the signal that mission control sends to those astronauts. It's not just about telling a muscle to move. It's about telling it exactly how much force to use.
And here's why that matters. The stronger and cleaner that signal is, the more efficiently your muscles can be recruited and the more force you can generate. If you have a weak or kind of fuzzy signal, you literally can't access your full muscular potential, even if the muscles themselves are perfectly strong and healthy.
So, you can see why this cortical drive is so important, which of course leads to the next big question for scientists: can we do anything to influence it? Can we turn up the volume on that signal? That's exactly what this experiment was designed to find out.
And this brings us to our source material for today, a 2016 study from the journal Brain Sciences. A group of researchers came up with this really clever experiment to see if a very specific physical intervention could actually boost the strength of that signal coming from the brain. The process they used was, really elegant in how simple it was. First, they measured everybody's existing cortical drive to get a starting point, a baseline. Then, they did their thing, the intervention. And finally, they just measured the signal again to see if anything changed. Simple, clean, and super effective.
Now, good science means being sure about your results, so they used two different groups. The first group got what's called a spinal manipulation. That's a very specific, quick movement that a clinician applies to a joint in the spine. The second group, the control group, just had their head moved around passively, kind of mimicking the setup but without that targeted adjustment. And this is so important because it helps make sure that any changes they saw were because of the manipulation itself and not just from, being moved around on a table.
So you might be wondering, how in the world do you measure an invisible signal from the brain? Well, they use this incredible piece of tech called transcranial magnetic stimulation, or TMS for short. Honestly, the easiest way to think about it is like a volume knob for the brain. It uses a magnetic field to safely give the motor part of the brain a little nudge, telling it to send a command. The scientists can then measure the electrical response in the muscle to see just how loud and clear that command was received.
Okay, so they ran the experiment, they gathered all the data, and this is where things get really, really interesting. What they found was, well, pretty surprising.
The results were just undeniable. For the group that actually received the spinal manipulation, that cortical drive, that signal from the brain, shot up. We're not talking about a tiny little blip here. It was a major boost in the brain-body communication.
Let's put some numbers to it, because this is pretty wild. They looked at a key muscle in the lower leg, the one that helps you flex your foot up. And after just one session, the signal strength from the brain to that muscle increased by an average of 44.6%. That is a huge jump.
And get this, it wasn't just in the legs. They tested a tiny little muscle in the hand, and the results were even bigger. There, they saw an average increase of 54.5% in signal strength. That suggests this isn't just a local thing, it's a widespread change in how the brain is controlling the body.
And what about the control group? The ones who just had their head moved around. Absolutely no significant changes. Nothing. This is what makes the findings so powerful. It really points the finger directly at the spinal manipulation as the cause of this change.
So this discovery immediately sparked another massive question. Where was this change actually taking place? Was it happening locally right there in the spinal cord itself? Or was the change happening all the way up at mission control, inside the brain?
And luckily, the researchers had the tools to figure this out. By looking at a few different measurements, they were able to pinpoint the source of the change. And as you can see here, they found no real changes in the spinal cord's local reflexes or activity. Instead, all signs pointed directly to the brain. The physical act on the spine seems to have actually changed the way the brain was working.
Okay, so changing brain function with a spinal adjustment, that is a really cool scientific finding. But what does it actually mean for real people in the real world? What's the so what here?
Well, the authors of the study suggested a few pretty exciting possibilities. I mean, think about patients recovering from something like a stroke, where that brain-muscle connection has been damaged. This could be huge. Or for people who are in rehab after surgery, or even for athletes who are just trying to get that extra 1% edge by making sure their brain can talk to their muscles as efficiently as possible.
So the big takeaway here isn't just about feeling better for a little while. What this research really suggests is that this kind of intervention might be a tool to fundamentally retrain that communication highway between the brain and the body.
Now, whenever we see an exciting study like this, it's so important to take a step back, put it in the right context, and ask, okay, what happens next?
Look, science is all about building knowledge, right? It's like putting a puzzle together, one piece at a time. And while the results from this 2016 paper are incredibly compelling, it's still one piece of that puzzle. It's a really promising piece, for sure, but it's part of a much bigger scientific conversation that's still going on.
And hey, the authors themselves are the first people to say this. They say it right there in their conclusion. These findings need to be followed up in the specific groups who could benefit most, people like stroke patients or athletes. That's just how good, responsible science works.
What a study like this does is it opens a door. It shows us that we're still just scratching the surface of understanding the incredible link between our body's physical structure and our brain's function. And it leaves us with this really tantalizing question. If this connection is real, what other secrets about human performance, recovery, and health is the brain-body connection just waiting for us to discover?